And welcome back to a Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono, and as always, my co-host, Chris here, and we are on the brink of the 2023 NFL kickoff. Tomorrow night, you've got Lions versus the Chiefs, and we're here to do our Thursday night weekly breakdown, where we will go over a couple news and notes for the Thursday night football game, as well as provide you with our starts and sits and sleepers that we think you should be playing in your game, or if you're thinking about it, starting in your game, maybe we can give you a tip or two that'll help you tip the scale your way.
It's time to defend this title right here.
That's
what time it is.
Okay. Well, the obvious news here, as everybody's seen, if you haven't seen our short already, go check out our channel. You can see the short, and that is the Travis Kelce news. The hyperextended knee that they're calling a quote-unquote bone bruise right now has him as doubtful for tomorrow night's game. We have yet to see any update as of this evening. Most likely won't see anything till closer to game time from Andy Reid, not to tip his hand at all. So that being said, if you are a Travis Kelce owner, you may want to be looking into a backup option if you don't already have one. Most probably wouldn't if you have Travis Kelce. So that being said, our short does do a good job of 4 players that you could look to grab to play week 1, because I don't foresee this being a long-term injury.
No, I don't think it's going to be a long-term injury. I think it's going to be something that he's probably not going to play in this game just out of precaution. They did the ACL test; it's intact. There was no tear there, so looking at just a bone bruise, but. After a hyperextended, like we've all done that. We've all been running and then hyperextending your knee. You're like, yeah, I don't know if I feel comfortable playing on this 2 days after I did this, but we'll see as the time progresses. I doubt he'll play, but we're going to talk about one of those guys that we talked about in the short. We'll talk about during this episode.
Yeah, and I mean, not that you guys really care out there, but I did the same exact thing to my knee, but I did it doing something stupid in college. And just like his brother was trying to kick a log, I tried to kick a bike. I hyperextended my knee. I was off, couldn't walk for about 6 days, but I was brand new on like the 7th day. It was like nothing ever happened. So, I don't know if it was as severe as what I did, but I know it does not feel good, and the swelling's still there. They're definitely not going to put him out on the field and risk it on a 17-game season before game 1.
They need him to defend the championship, not to win against the Detroit Lions.
Correct. Outside of that, there was a little bit of news that came out about Jahmyr Gibbs saying that they possibly may limit him in the opening game. I don't know if that's a smokescreen or what that actually means. To me, the Lions are going to do whatever they can to defeat the defending champions. So, and if that means their weapon X is Jahmyr Gibbs, their weapon X is Jahmyr Gibbs, and they'll use him. So I don't, take that with a grain of salt. For those people who are thinking about playing Jahmyr Gibbs, we'll tell you where we think we should start him or sit him. So before we get into the starts and sits for the Thursday night football game, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button so you get all the drops. As I said in previous episodes, we are going to have 3 episodes a week. We'll have an episode dropping on Tuesdays for your waiver wires, Thursdays for your Thursday night preview, and Saturdays for your weekend preview starts and sits. That being said, let's get into the first team of the Thursday night game that we want to talk about, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. As you can see here, we have our starts and our sits, and let's start from the top here. Pat Mahomes is locked and loaded. You're going to play him no matter what start of the week. I don't think we need to go into detail of why, but he is your QB1 from last year, and he keeps himself up around the QB3 range every single season he's been here in Kansas City that he's played a full season.
I think as we move on through the season, and bear with us, this is our first year doing this, and going through starts and sits with you guys and doing this podcast. So I think as we move on the season, he's going to be an every week starter. However, there's going to be a lot of every week starters that there are going to be times where we prefer to sit them if we had someone better. Mahomes is never going to be in that category. He's matchup proof. Yeah. As long as we talk about Kansas City start sits, and we're going to go through all the positions and all the players, Mahomes will be a start.
Yeah, moving down the list here, as you can see, we got Isaiah Pacheco as a start on this week, along with Jerick McKinnon. And that's going to be game script wise. If it's a ground and pound, run the clock out type situation without Travis Kelce there, I could see Isaiah Pacheco being the guy. Now let's, take that with a little precaution because he is coming off of surgeries. He is coming off of being on the injured list. However, he is cleared and ready to go. But Jerick McKinnon, it could be a situation that without Travis Kelce there, the targets are going to have to go to somebody. And we know what he did towards the end of the season for the Chiefs in that run to the Super Bowl. And he is a very viable option for Pat Mahomes out the backfield, not just as a dump off, but an actual scripted play.
Yeah, I mean, I think McKinnon is the running back I want to start in this backfield for this game. I don't not like Pacheco. I just think that McKinnon's going to get, especially in PPR, McKinnon's going to get a lot of usage in this game. Yeah. Especially if Kels doesn't play, then McKinnon's going to be used out of the backfield. I don't, and you'll see kind of as we're moving along to the wide receivers, like I don't really trust a lot of these wide receivers yet. There's a lot of unknown there. There's a lot of unproven guys, and McKinnon is a guy that Mahomes has played with. Mahomes ran with him to the Super Bowl, and I think Pacheco is going to get a lot of usage in this game because they're going to want to kind of manage the game a little bit more. It's not. I don't see this game going complete shootout, but I do think that these two teams are going to kind of tiptoe around each other a little bit.
Yeah, I differ a little bit on the shootout. I think both teams have the ability to score points regardless of the players on the field here. So, but I agree. I don't think it's going to be a downfield threat. Now, that being said, our next group of players that I have here in Tony, Sky Moore, and MVS, that does present some opportunity for a downfield threat with Kadarius Toney, MVS being the downfield threat really, and Sky Moore. But to me and Chris, we both agree that Toney coming off of his off-season injuries and off-injured Kadarius Toney, to me, is somebody that we are not willing to start. Same thing with Sky Moore. Yes, Sky Moore was on all the first-team offensive plays and snaps, but he didn't produce much for it, and it's more of a sit, wait, and see what you're going to get out of him because now that Toney's going to be, quote-unquote, playing, and how many snaps he's going to be in for, that eats into Sky Moore because Toney's the better guy on the field, let's be honest here. So we actually have our sleeper pick here. And again, this is going to be somebody that you flex if you're in a 3-wide receiver in a flex league, multi-team, 14-team league where you have deeper benches. MVS is a viable option because somebody's going to be taking that downfield threat and chunk plays, and he's the next man up outside of Travis Kelce here, who's going to be able to give you those first down and chunk opportunities.
Well, we saw MVS in 2 of the 3 games in the playoffs last year. He scored touchdowns in, including the Cincinnati game where they had to kind of shoot it out, where they had to kind of go back and forth. He had 116 yards and a touchdown. So I think that he has the most. It's not the most veteran experience because Rich James is there, but he has the most veteran experience with Mahomes of this whole offensive group.
Correct.
Now, Kadarius Toney did practice today, so that's a really good sign that he's going to play tomorrow, and he was part of the walkthroughs. So he's going to play. It's just in what kind of capacity. And I agree with Jono. It's with Sky Moore. It's not that we're doubting his talent. I want to see it first. Like I'm not going to go and plug a guy in that failed to produce anything last year and has failed to produce anything meaningful in any reps. Like, the preseason and practices and him making catches and running great routes there, that's one thing. When you're in game, it's a completely different thing. And how they're going to script using him is a completely different thing. And I see if Toney's healthy and they're going to use Toney quite a bit, Toney's going to be the guy that they're going to use more.
Yeah.
And then same thing with Rashee Rice. You don't really, I don't expect a ton out of Rashee Rice this year.
Well, especially not with Kadarius Toney being in the lineup because they want Kadarius Toney. They see this guy as being their weapon X, their big time player here, and to me, he's going to be the big playmaker here, and Travis Kelce is going to be your sort of game manager. You're almost like, when you used to have Hines Ward, Antoine Randall L, and those guys over in Pittsburgh, is like Hines Ward was your guaranteed go-to, never fail receiver. And that's Travis Kelce for this team. And then you had a bunch of other guys that are playmakers. And Kadarius Toney's the best playmaker in the receiving core here. And plus you have, Richie James with a knee injury, I believe, right now. So he's questionable to play. And then they already talked about Rashee Rice and some of the other younger receivers, working them in slowly to start the season. So that, to me, it just doesn't give me much confidence anybody in terms of the wide receiver core except for MVS. And we have him as a sleeper. And we're saying a flex at best to start because, in my opinion, he's somebody you can maybe throw into a DFS lineup or something like that where you can reap the benefits, but he's not helping you in a redraft league unless you have such deep benches and you need to get somebody out there. Same thing goes with Pacheco and McKinnon. We're not saying these are RB2s for you to start. These are more flex plays for you. The only true tried starter is Pat Mahomes as your QB1.
That's the problem with this offense is that, they're going to be a top offense in the league. It's just outside of Kels, who's really going to be the guy? Because last year Juju produced a lot, and we're going to kind of wait and see to see who the Juju is going to be this season, and everyone's going to jump on that player. Yeah, because a lot of people drafted Sky Moore, but like we said, MVS's roster, like his roster percentage and sleeper is 17%.
Yeah. So well, and here's a scary thing: the Sky Moore, and I don't know if this was a product of the preseason and the plays. He played all 3 games for the Chiefs, and he was with Pat Mahomes during games. He only had 2 catches on 2 targets, and he had 6 total receiving yards. And one of the catches was a 6-yard catch. That's what scares me about the way they were using him in the preseason. I didn't see anything that really wowed me in terms of what they can really do with him. He's that type of guy who you saw in the playoffs and you saw in the Super Bowl that can go out the slot into the flat and just beat a guy in a quick route and get into the end zone on a 5-yard reception. But he didn't do anything last year to really show me his downfield threat ability, his open field catch ability, his get the ball in space and make moves ability. That's Kadarius Toney. So that's why Sky Moore was in an opportunity without Toney before and is now in a position that I don't know what that opportunity looks like.
Well, hence why they drafted Sky Moore and then in the same season traded for Kadarius Toney.
Kadarius Toney, exactly. Well, let's move on. We're not going to talk about the tight ends here. We already said about Travis Kelce. I did say in my short earlier, and Chris alluded to it, that about Noah Gray being a possible replacement, because this could be just a 1-week miss and you don't want to break the bank and either use a bunch of fab to go get another tight end, or you want to anything of that situation. You can pay for the cheap on Noah Gray. He was definitely efficient in games he played last year. He had multiple games of 45 yards. He had a couple touchdowns thrown in there. Obviously, he played behind a healthy full season Travis Kelce there. But he has a 2-year rapport with Pat Mahomes, and between his first year and second year definitely proved he had that. So I'd feel comfortable if that's what you want to do. There's other people that we mentioned in that short. Again, go take a look at that so that you could see who we think are better options to take at tight end. And then lastly is the Kansas City Chiefs defense. We are not taking them as a start opportunity here as even a flyer or streaming option. There are better defenses out there this week that you can stream.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the Lions now as well. So the Lions here are starts and sits. We obviously have Jared Goff at the top, the quarterback. We have him as a start. I think this is going to be an awesome kickoff opportunity for the 23 season for Goff. And the whole Lions team in general. This is an opportunity to upset the Super Bowl champs. Even without Travis Kelce there, even if he was there, we still would have had the same situation that we're looking at.
This is what they would call a plant your flag game for them.
Taking one out of CBS's book here.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So, but to me,
sorry,
Jared Goff had a great season last year. To me, he's an opportunity with weapons at wide receiver, getting Marvin Jones Jr. back, getting a rookie Sam Laporta at tight end, and Jahmyr Gibbs out the backfield. He's got weapons. He could spread the ball around. And even though he wasn't the biggest downfield threat passer last year, except for the 2 big bombs he threw to Jameson Williams, he doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to do that to pick apart this defense that is going to be without Chris Jones pass rushing him.
Yeah, I mean, I like him here just because I mean, look what he did opening week last week or last year against the Eagles, who were a top defense last year, and now without Chris Jones, this is not a formidable defense.
Correct.
They're a decent defense. They're middle of the pack, but they are not this defense that is going to come after the quarterback and get after the quarterback and create turnovers and lock down receivers. Let's not forget, he still has Amon-Ra St. Brown. All right.
Absolutely. Top 10 receiver.
This is a year where Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to keep elevating his game. And he was a breakout last year. And I think he's going to break out again this year. And, he has like same kind of upward trajectory that Justin Jefferson. The reason we like Justin Jefferson so much is because he just keeps getting better and better. But so does Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think he has weapons around him with Sam Laporta, with Marvin Jones Jr., with Gibbs, with
Khalif Raymond. Like, he's got still weapons there.
There's weapons on this team. And Goff can throw downfield. We've seen, first of all, I mean, think back, 5 years ago when
when he was at the Rams. But I'm just saying, in recent history, he has not been
the most memorable game. The most memorable game of the last 10 years was that shootout game with the Kansas City Chiefs.
The ketchup and mustard game?
The ketchup and mustard game.
That was, to me, that was so one of my favorite games to watch because it just was score play after score play.
And all in like the last 6 or 7 minutes. But people forget that Jared Goff was the quarterback of that team. And he was shooting it out with them. This is the reason I like Jared Goff coming into the season. He was getting drafted way, way, way too late for what he can actually do and the weapons around him. I get the rushing upside of Anthony Richardson, but he had no business going in front of Jared Goff. No business.
Yeah.
So Goff is definitely going to be a start this week for me.
Yeah, start for me as well, because I think most people either faded the quarterback position and drafted Goff, or drafted someone like Anthony Richardson and then took Goff on the back end, or Justin Fields and took Goff on the back end. You could feel confident in a game, Thursday night game, starting him here. Let's talk about the running backs. We have 2 new faces for the Lions that are going to pick up exactly where they left off from last year's duo. You have David Montgomery, who's replacing Jamal Williams, and you have Jahmyr Gibbs replacing DeAndre Swift. To me, both running backs, I think David Montgomery's a better between the tackles runner than Jamal Williams was. So that's a big plus. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is just as good of a weapon as DeAndre Swift was last year. And when looking into it here, if he could be healthier than DeAndre Swift, it's an even bigger win for the Lions. So I could see why they tried to jump up and grab a guy at the 12th overall pick like Jahmyr Gibbs. We have both of them being starters for us and starts. I think Montgomery would be a great running back 2, and Jahmyr Gibbs will be a low-end 2 flex option here, because it's a kind of how are they going to deploy him, and how are they going to use him week 1, game 1. Montgomery's in the perfect position to get goal line opportunity, and without Chris Jones there, this one defense has been pretty good against the rush, but now you lose your biggest weapon. That helps out Montgomery, and we can assume he's going to take the goal line opportunity roles, and they should be sitting around the goal line pretty often.
Yeah, I mean, this defense was pretty average against the run. They weren't great against the run, and they lost their best defensive lineman. Or they didn't lose him. He's just not there.
Yeah.
So Montgomery is the guy I want to start here. If you're in PPR format, you want to start Gibbs. I'm perfectly fine with that. I would start Gibbs even in a standard format this year because or this week, just because I do think that with the injuries and suspension that they're dealing with at the wide receiver position, they're going to need some pass catchers. And Gibbs, that we've seen him kind of used running out of the slot as kind of a 2 backfield set. So I do like that. I do want to say this about David Montgomery, though, is that David Montgomery is not a slouch in terms of receiving. A receiver out of the backfield. He had in his career 25 receptions, 54 receptions, 42 receptions, 34 receptions. And then pretty much in the last 3 years, all over 300 yards receiving out of the backfield. Yeah. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's a good receiver out of the backfield. So I think that helps him too, but he's definitely a better in between the tackles. He's going to get the goal line work, and he's going to get early down work here. I've been saying this for three months now, that this is the way it was going to play out. Even with even with Jahmyr Gibbs. And they're going to draft a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs because he is a special player, but he's not going to be the every down running back. He's not Alvin Kamara yet. And even with Alvin Kamara, if you look at early on in his career, he was splitting a lot of carries. And he continued to split a lot of carries.
Even his whole career he has never really been a, it's kind of like, Eckler at times where the guy really doesn't hit 200 rushes that often. I mean, I think last year was one of the highest rushing totals for Kamara. But it also was one of the lowest productions. I mean, we're not talking about Kamara here. I do agree with Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery. The thing about the two of them, too, against the Chiefs last year were one of the worst teams for receiving running backs. Running backs out the backfield catching. They could not stop them. So, like, if the Lions are going to cover. Yeah, if Lions are going to do anything and try to employ that sort of method against them, I think they could be successful with either back. But obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy that you get the ball in space and he makes things happen. So we have a start for both of them. We also, our next start is Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got to start him here. He was a top 10 guy last year. He is a go-to target for Jared Goff, and he will be a go-to target week after week for Jared Goff here as well.
Yeah, he's going to be like Pat Mahomes for me pretty much this entire season. I think he is fairly matchup proof. Even against a shutdown corner, I think he is going to be matchup proof. So I really like him, especially this week. I don't think that there's no one else that's really going to catch passes. So I expect him to have 14, 15 targets this game.
Yeah, I do too.
And he converts most of those targets. So he's probably going to end up with 10 to 12 catches.
So we don't have any other starts for the wide receivers. The only wide receiver of note that we put on here is Marvin Jones as a sleeper. It is the beginning of the season. It's tough to say who's going to be the next man up. Marvin Jones was the wide receiver 3 last year for the Jaguars. He was the wide receiver 2 his whole career for the Lions. But at the Jaguars, he still had an 11.5 yards per reception. He finished with 46 catches, 529 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Over half of his receptions were first downs. He is a tried and true, good-handed, 33-year-old NFL wide receiver.
He's the oldest receiver in the league.
Yeah, I think he has an opportunity to give the Lions something early in this season before Jameson Williams comes back. Obviously, Khalif Raymond and Josh Reynolds have been on this roster for the past couple of years, and they also can produce as well, especially Reynolds getting some downfield deep threat opportunities. So you'll see him sprinkled in. But to me, Marvin Jones has always been the solid hands, the go-to guy. He did it with Matt Stafford. He did it with the Bengals before that, and he did it last year as well. Anytime his number was called upon, he gave you almost a first down, more than every other catch percentage for Trevor Lawrence. So he's a sleeper. I don't know if that's somebody that you're going to even be willing to pick up and draft. You have to have injuries depending upon what your lineup and who you drafted. If you went to go with Cooper Kupp and then you have somebody else who's questionable to play, and so all of a sudden you're looking at to pick somebody else up. It's a stretch to play Marvin Jones, but don't be surprised if he gets some volume this game. I'm
calling it. I've kind of said this before. I like narrative in the NFL, and it's him coming back to his team in his first game back against the defending Super Bowl champs. Marvin Jones going for 100 yards.
You heard it. You heard it here. You heard it here. And the last sleeper we have here in terms of a pass catcher is Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end. I said it already earlier I was going to put it as one of my bold picks in my short, and I ended up trading it out for another one. But I still think it's a bold pick for the season. And I think there's going to be 2 rookie wide receivers that end in the top 10, or rookie tight ends that end in the top 10 tight ends. And that's in Kincaid and Sam Laporta or Luke Musgrave. These guys have fallen into the great opportunities here. Laporta has won the job. He's following up behind Hawkinson, who had a great career with the Lions to start his career. And so to me, I think because the fact that there isn't a true wide receiver 2 here, Laporte is a great route runner. He's going to have mismatches. He's going to get himself in open lanes and open opportunity. And Jared Goff isn't afraid to throw to his tight end. He's proved that in the past too as well. So he's another one that if you are a Travis Kelce owner and he's still out there somehow, although I looked at the percentage owned, it's pretty high, go grab him. Or if you are deciding between somebody and Sam Laporta, I like the matchup here against the Chiefs for Laporta in a game that could hit the over, just because these two teams can score points.
Yeah, I like Sam Laporta as a start and RB or a tight end 1 finish, so top 12 tight end this week.
Yeah, we have him as sleeper because again, it's most people haven't drafted him as your starter. But if you're willing to take a shot on him and you got some room to play around, he's a guy that could end up beating your starter out after this week here. And then the Detroit Lions defense is a no start for us. Yes, this defense is pretty good at the pass rush. Hutchinson is a great sack machine too as well. In fact, he had 2 interceptions last year too, so he's a great athlete. But to me, I'm not trusting either of his defenses. Pat Mahomes could shred any defense. I mean, look at the Super Bowl. One of the best pass rushers last year, pass rushing defenses, and a great defensive backs system. And Pat Mahomes was able to carve them up anytime he really wanted to.
Did he?
Well, he did good enough to win. So
the team did.
Well, the
Jalen
running
Hurts
game
better than him.
Jalen Hurts also runs the ball. I think he's a machine, and we know the Chiefs' defense is not as stout as the Eagles' defense.
Just saying. I mean, he got shut down last. They won the Super Bowl, but he didn't. He was under 300 yards. I just don't think that's going to happen this week. Sit Detroit. I don't know why you're drafting Detroit anyway. There's so many other defenses that you could have.
Yeah, listen. Yeah, he was under 300 yards. He had 182 yards. He threw for 3 touchdowns. Still,
I understand that, but he didn't shred them.
He only threw 27 passes. Because he didn't need to pass that often. So when I say you look at exactly. But when you look at what he did the week before in Cincinnati, he had 43 attempts. He was 21 for 27, very accurate, threading the needles. Then he had a 77% completion percentage.
Listen,
shredding. I'm saying he shredded him. He just didn't put up 500 yards, but 182 yards and 3 touchdowns.
That's not shredding. If you're throwing for under 200 yards, you're not shredding them up.
I mean, the fact that he had 6 incompletions.
That's fine
altogether. I don't know. I beg to differ. But that being said, I digress. I don't think we agree. We don't think the Lions are going to be as a stout defense.
Start the Lions.
Yeah.
I don't think you should start the Lions at any point this season.
Yeah. I don't care if Travis Kelce isn't playing. It doesn't mean, I better go grab the Lions because they're not going to be able to put up points. This team's going to find ways to put up points for sure.
Pat Mahomes is behind center. Don't start the defense against him. Actually, the Denver Broncos playing well. I'd play the Broncos against him.
Yeah. Well, that's our starts and sits for the Thursday Night Football. As usual, if you want to, leave a comment. Tell us what you think about our starts and sits. If you think of something different or if you have a different opinion, we'd love to hear it. We love to go back and forth. If you have questions on a player, we're happy to answer it. Thanks for all those who've been asking us some start-sit questions. We will get to them as quickly as we can, and we'd be happy to answer them for you. Like I said, our next episode is going to be coming out Saturday morning, and that will be the weekend game preview where we will quickly run through the starts and sits for each game, kind of like how we did here. Quicker pace, just because we're going to go through every single game that's going to be going on Sunday and Monday. But we're going to give you our advice as best as we can about each position and player for each team that we believe is a start or sit option. And don't forget, like, subscribe, hit that notification button so you can get that notification on Saturday morning when our episode drops.
Good luck tomorrow night.
Good luck, and good luck on your seasons, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in.